Most women over 40 think their weight loss struggles come down to hormones, willpower, or the right diet. But that is actually not the real problem. The real reason you can't stay consistent or stop emotional eating or break old patterns is because a younger part of you, your inner child, is still running your relationship with food, your body, and even your level of motivation. And until you understand why she shows up the way she does, weight loss will always feel harder than it needs to be. I'm Jennifer, a licensed mental health therapist and strength coach who has helped over 1,200 women heal their nervous system through weight training. And today I am going to show you how inner child wounds directly affect your habits, your consistency, and your ability to lose weight after 40 years of age, so you don't have to keep starting every Monday. Today, we are going to look at 5 specific inner child wounds that research has directly connected to weight struggles. For each one, I will explain what the wound is, how it shows up in your relationship with food and your body, and most importantly, what you can do about it. And stay until the end because I am going to share a simple practice that you can do to start healing these wounds, something that you can literally do in 5 minutes that research shows can reduce emotional eating by up to 40%. Sound good? Okay, here we go. Okay, wound number 1. The inner critic wound. This one comes from emotional abuse or constant criticism in childhood. This could be anything from extreme emotional abuse to scenarios like possibly a parent who constantly criticized you for your appearance, or being compared to siblings or other kids who maybe look more societally acceptable, or hearing you would be so much prettier if you just lost weight. Or it could even be well-meaning comments about your body that just landed wrong. I had a client, let's call her Rose, who told me she could still hear her mother's voice every time she looked in the mirror. She would hear, "Rose, you know, you have such a pretty face. If you would only just lose some weight, honey." Well, Rose was 47 when she told me this, and her mother had been saying this since she was like literally 8 years old. Here's what the science shows. A 2023 study found that emotional abuse accounts for 51% of the variance between childhood trauma and adult BMI. 51%, that's a huge number. Why? Because when you grow up being criticized, you internalize that critical voice. It literally becomes your voice. And here's the cruel irony. You think if you just criticize yourself enough, if you are just hard enough on yourself, then you will actually change. Then you will finally be disciplined enough. But research actually shows the opposite happens. So how does the inner critic wound sabotage weight loss after 40? For example, let's say you've been doing great all week, you're meal prepped, you hit your workouts, and you're feeling great. Then Thursday afternoon comes and you decide to have a cookie. And then maybe you have another, and then the voice kicks in and it says, "See, you have no willpower. You absolutely cannot do this. You always mess this up. Why do you even bother trying? You are never going to change and you are always going to be the same weight." And what happens next? Well, if you've already ruined the day, you may as well eat the whole box of cookies, right? And that is so similar. It is like your brain goes into full toddler logic, or I call it like an adult temper tantrum. And you'll say something to yourself, "Well, I just broke a glass. I may as well go ahead and break all the glasses in the cabinet." Like that makes no sense, but that's what an inner critic wound does. It keeps you stuck in this exhausting cycle of extreme restriction or trying to be perfect, and then the inevitable slip up because you're human, which causes a massive shame spiral, which then leads to emotional eating to soothe the shame, and then more self-criticism occurs, and then the cycle just repeats again, and you're stuck in this loop over and over. And the thing is, your inner critic thinks she's actually helping you. She thinks if she just yells loud enough, you'll finally get it together. But we'll talk about what actually does help in a minute. First, let's look at wound number 2. This one is sneaky. It is the abandoned child wound, and it comes from emotional neglect, which, by the way, research shows has the strongest correlation with eating disorders of all childhood traumas. Emotional neglect doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like parents who were just physically present, but kind of emotionally unavailable, like constant texters but not paying attention, or being the kid who learned to not be a bother, or maybe having your feelings dismissed as too sensitive, or you're too dramatic, or you're too much, or just anybody really paying attention to you at all? Is anybody really even there noticing you? And here's what happens. You learn that the safest way to exist is to basically just be invisible, to not need too much, to not take up too much space. So here's what is so interesting about this. You would think someone with this wound would want to lose the weight, right? Because they would want to be noticed, to finally be seen. No, that's not the case in this situation. Research published in Thrive Global documented this fascinating phenomenon. Women who grew up with emotional neglect would lose 20, 30, even 40 pounds and then mysteriously self-sabotage right when people started noticing their weight loss. Why is this? Because attention feels so terrifying to that person, to their abandoned inner child. Picture this, you've lost 25 pounds, you're looking amazing, and suddenly your husband's more affectionate, a little more touchy-feely, friends are complimenting you, people are noticing you, strangers are making eye contact, and you are getting all this attention, but your nervous system is like, holy cow, what's happening? Danger, danger. So, what does your subconscious do in this situation? It finds a way to put the weight back on, not because you're weak, not because you lack discipline, but because to your inner child, being invisible equals safety. If this is resonating with you right now, just take a breath because this is not your fault. That little version of you learned to be invisible because it was the smartest survival strategy she had. She is not trying to ruin your life. She is trying to save it. Women with this wound often have a hidden pattern. They start out strong with a program, but mysteriously lose motivation. They feel uncomfortable with compliments around their body. They prefer exercising alone or at home, or they may have this kind of weird guilt about taking up gym space or being too seen at the gym. The good news is, once you understand this pattern, you can start working with your inner child instead of working against her. Before we get to solutions, we need to talk about wound number 3. And this one might be the most important. Okay, deep breath for this one. This is the armor wound, and it comes from physical or sexual abuse, assault, or violation of boundaries. And I want to be really clear. If you experience this, I am so sorry. You did not deserve it, and it was not your fault. In research, a 2013 analysis of 57,000 women, which is a massive study, found that women who experienced physical or sexual abuse in childhood were twice as likely to develop food addiction as adults. But here's the part that broke my heart when I understood this. Many women willfully put on weight as a protective mechanism to feel less attractive, less vulnerable, less likely to be hurt again. Your body literally becomes armor, and weight becomes your shield. And losing that weight, well, it feels like removing your protection and walking into battle completely naked. And this is how it shows up for these women. This wound is tricky because consciously you want to lose weight. You make plans to lose weight, you start a program, and you have genuine intentions. But unconsciously, every time you get close to your goal weight, something happens. Maybe you experience sudden intense cravings that you can't control, or maybe you get too busy to exercise, or maybe a mysterious injury sidelines you, or maybe you experience this overwhelming feeling of vulnerability that makes you want to hide. And you beat yourself up for self-sabotaging when really your nervous system is doing exactly what it thinks it needs to do to keep you safe. And here's what makes this wound so complex. The solution is not to lose weight. That's what's so important in this situation, because if weight is genuinely serving as a psychological protection, trying to force it off without addressing the underlying trauma is like removing a cast from a broken bone before it's even healed. It is not just uncomfortable, it can be genuinely harmful. If this wound resonates with you, weight loss might need to be paired with trauma therapy. And that is okay. Actually, that is more than okay. That is you being wise enough and brave enough to heal the root instead of just treating the symptoms. But here is something important. Healing is possible in this situation, and the fact that you are watching this video, learning about this stuff, that's already part of the healing process. Now, let's talk about wound number 4, the overwhelmed child wound. That's my wound. This comes from growing up in chaos, unpredictability, or environments where emotions were big and scary and nobody taught you how to handle them. Maybe your household was something like high conflict all the time, or financially unstable, or dealing with addiction. That was mine. Or maybe there was just a lot of yelling and emotional volatility. That was mine too. And here's what the research shows with that type of household. Trauma doesn't just leave emotional scars. It actually disrupts the development of your whole nervous system, making it difficult to regulate emotions as an adult. A study published in the journal Appetite found that the link between childhood trauma, emotional eating, is fully mediated by emotional dysregulation. This basically means your emotional eating is not because you are weak. You are eating emotionally because you never learned the skills to process big feelings without using food. Think about it. When you were 7 and overwhelmed, did anyone ever sit down with you and say something like this? Hey, that feeling in your chest, that's anxiety. Here is how we work with it and we breathe through it. Or did they ever say, I see you're really angry right now. Let's talk about healthy ways to express that. That didn't happen in my family, probably not yours either. So here's what happens at 45. Your boss sends a passive-aggressive email, or maybe your teenager mouths off and finally says, I hate you. Or you have 17 things on your to-do list and it's only 9 a.m., but all that stuff has to be done by 3 p.m. And you feel this wave of overwhelm rising in your chest and your head gets all buzzy. Your conscious brain knows you should take some deep breaths or go for a walk or call a friend or journal it out or do something productive that's going to help. But your inner child, she knows exactly how to make things go away. And it's food. It's not carrot sticks. It's not a nice piece of grilled chicken. I am talking about the drive-through pint of ice cream, the entire bag of chips, because your nervous system is not looking for nutrition. It's looking for relief, preferably in the form of sugar, carbs, and fat, something like a donut. And here's the really messed up part. The emotional eating provides temporary relief, but then creates more stress, guilt, shame, physical discomfort, which triggers more overwhelm, which triggers more emotional eating. It is like using gasoline to put out a fire. Sure, it does something, but it definitely is not solving the problem. Women with this wound often say things like, I know what to do, but I just can't make myself do it. I'm fine all day and then 8 p.m. hits and I lose it. Or they say, I can handle stress at work, but then I come home and I raid the pantry and drink bottles of wine. If that is you, you are not lacking willpower. You are lacking emotion regulation skills, and that's not your fault. It's just something you never were taught. Which brings us to the fifth and final wound, and this one might surprise you. This is the people pleaser wound. This develops when your worth got tied to making other people happy, keeping the peace, or being good. This is mine too, and yes, we can have more than one inner child wound. Common origins for this are having a parent you had to take care of emotionally, or maybe being rewarded for compliance all the time, or being good, but then being punished for having needs and wants, or maybe learning that love was conditional on your behavior, or being the good daughter who never caused any problems. I had a client who would stick to any eating plan if it was for anyone else but herself, if it was for her doctor, her husband, an upcoming wedding, or her daughter's wedding, or her trainer. She had incredible discipline for everyone else. But the moment I asked her to lose weight for herself because she deserved to feel good in her own body, nope. Complete mental block. It was like I asked her to speak Arabic or Mandarin or something. Studies show that people pleasers often lack the sense that their own needs are valid. And get this, they can actually sustain the most restrictive behaviors longer than most people because restriction equals being good, but they can't sustain healthy, balanced self-care for themselves. This is because self-care requires believing you are actually worth caring for. And the people pleaser wound says, everyone else's needs come first, before mine. It shows up something like this on Monday morning. You're meal prepped, organized, ready to crush your goals for about 3 days. Then something like this may happen. Your husband wants to go out to dinner or get takeout, and it's the worst food ever. Or maybe your friend suggests happy hour. Or maybe mom needs help with something during your exact gym time. Or maybe a coworker brings in donuts and cookies and looks all disappointed when you turn them down. And every single time you abandon your plan. Why? because your inner child saying no to others means risking rejection. And rejection feels like self-annihilation. So instead, you'll eat the donut to make your coworker smile, or maybe you skip the gym to help your mom, or you order the pasta with your husband because he wants to have pasta, or you say yes to wine when you really want to say no, or maybe not because you don't care about your health, but it's literally because you care more about not being a burden to others and not being difficult and not being too much or too demanding. Women with this wound often can stick to a diet if their doctor told them to, which is external authority, but they struggle with programs that emphasize listening to your body because they don't know what their body needs, they have no idea. Or maybe you feel guilty taking time to exercise, saying to yourself, I should be doing something for someone else, which are accompanied with feelings of selfishness. Or you may immediately share your food goals with everyone, making it about everybody else's approval of what you're doing. And here's the real kicker. You cannot heal your relationship with your body until you believe you are allowed to take up space, have needs, and prioritize yourself. Okay, so we have covered 5 wounds. You are probably sitting there thinking, oh my God, I have got at least 2 or 3 of these. What the hell? Now what? Well, let's talk about what actually helps. Here is what I need you to understand. You cannot willpower your way past an inner child wound. You can't discipline your way through it. You can't just stop emotional eating any more than you can just stop your nervous system from triggering fight or flight. These wounds aren't character flaws. They are evidence that you survived something hard. And the behaviors that feel like self-sabotage, well, they are actually outdated protection mechanisms. Your inner child isn't the enemy. She has been trying to keep you safe with the only tools she had. So what actually helps in this situation? These 3 things are a great start. Number 1, awareness. You just did it right now. Recognizing which wounds you may carry is huge. You can't heal what you don't acknowledge. So if watching this video gave you some oh crap moments, that is actually progress. Number 2, reparenting work. This is when you consciously give your inner child what she needed, but she didn't ever get. Things like safety, validation, permission to have needs, or possibly unconditional acceptance. So here is a simple practice that research shows can reduce emotional eating by up to 40%. This is called the 5-minute inner child check-in. Next time you are about to emotionally eat, I want you to pause and ask yourself, how old do I feel right now? Or what do I sense? Who is present? What does this younger version of me really need? What would I say to a 7-year-old who is feeling this way? Then actually talk to that part of yourself with compassion. Out loud if you can, and it feels kind of silly, okay? But you might say, you're not stupid for wanting food, but instead say, I see you are overwhelmed. That makes sense, but you are safe now, and let's figure this out together. Believe me, it feels totally weird at first, but do it anyway. Your inner child has been running the show. It is time to let your adult self step in and be present and be the one that's in charge. Number 3 is professional support. If you have trauma, especially the armor wound, please consider working with a trauma-informed therapist. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. This is courage. This is bravery. You wouldn't try to set your own broken bone, right? Same principle. Some wounds need professional help to heal, and that is completely okay. And take the time to find a therapist that you resonate with. That is very important. One more thing, healing inner child wounds does not happen overnight. This is not some 30-day fix or 30-day diet, but here's what I have seen over and over. When women start doing this work, something shifts in them. Not always on the scale right away, but in how they feel and how they respond to food. In their relationship to themselves, they respond differently. And eventually, the external changes follow. Because here is the secret. Sustainable weight loss doesn't come from controlling your body. It comes from healing your relationship with yourself. All of these things, before I was really ever working in the therapy field. And when I had to go to therapy myself and people said, start with awareness, I really thought it was a bunch of baloney, to be honest. And it was really hard for me to understand. I just wanted the solution to fix it. But I can tell you this, if you just look at the part of yourself that kind of you feel like you have to fix and control, and if you can say, oh my gosh, here's this part now, this part that comes up that says, oh my God, it really wants to have this food, or it's really gonna, go for the next cookie or the next donut or the next bag of chips. What part is here? Once you start asking questions from curiosity versus criticism, a lot starts to change. And I'll make a future video on this, okay? But that's another whole video in itself. But I can promise you that it does change things. So let's recap the 5 wounds. The inner critic from emotional abuse keeps you in shame spirals. Then the abandoned child from emotional neglect makes attention feel dangerous. The armor wound from violation uses weight as protection. And then the overwhelmed child from chaos never learned to regulate emotions. And then the people pleaser from conditional love who cannot prioritize self-care. If you recognized yourself in any or all of these, I want you to know something. You are not broken. Not at all. You are not lacking willpower or discipline. You are not just lazy. I never believed that. You are a woman who survived childhood the best way she could, and that little girl inside you is still trying to keep you safe using strategies that worked when you were 7, but they don't serve you anymore. Your job now isn't to bully her into submission or criticize her. It is to become the loving parent she needed then but didn't have. To give her permission to finally feel safe, to let her know that the adult you has got this. Weight loss after 40 isn't just about calories or macros. It's about healing the wounded parts of yourself that have been using food and weight to cope, to protect, to survive. And that work, that is the real transformation. So tell me in the comments which wound resonated most with you. You don't have to share details, just drop a number 1 through 5. Sometimes just naming it helps, just naming which wound it is. And if this video helped you see yourself more clearly, please do me a favor and share it with another woman who might need to hear this. Because the more we talk about this stuff, the less alone we all feel, and we start to feel somewhat normalized. So thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this hard work. And remember, healing is not linear, but it is totally worth it. I'll see you in the next video.